Well, we are so excited to be joined by Josh Young. Josh has a BFA in musical theater from Syracuse, has been on Broadway as Judas Iscariot in Jesus Christ Superstar, for which he received a Tony nomination, Amazing Grace, as well as lots of regional tours and such things. Josh was previously the coordinator of the musical theater program at Oakland University before becoming the coordinator of the musical theater program at Missouri State, which is still located in Springfield, Missouri. They take classes of about 16 to 20. They offer degrees in musical theater, acting, etc. Josh, welcome on the pod. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, thank you. How are you?
I am doing just fine. So, before we dive too deep into the Missouri State and the sort of our 2.0 update interview, just tell me a little bit about your journey from Broadway to Oakland and then Oakland to Missouri State. So, what made you make those various leaps?
Well, I'm sure just like you, I wanted kids, right? And my wife and I, we're not really New York folk. We really like being out in the suburbs
Hmm.
and not having that pace of life kind of. We love doing what we did. My wife is a veteran of 6 Broadway shows, and
Hmm.
I loved working in New York too. But when it came to our real goals in life, it was having a family, and I didn't want to struggle with you can't really put your kid to sleep all the time if both of you are in a show, and that was
Hmm.
important to us. So
Hmm.
so we both had kind of achieved our goals in life when it came to theater,
Hmm.
and we can still scratch that itch. We do summer stock, and we every month we do another symphony, and that's how we get to perform still.
Uh-huh.
But we also, both of us, really love teaching. Emily's on faculty here as well. She teaches voice, and we love to kind of live vicariously through our students and celebrate their successes now.
Yep, I love it. Well said. And you get to avoid what we just had to endure, which is like an interview for a 3K program of competitive 3K. I mean, I'm feeling for our poor students who have to deal with this in the college level. I'm like, we have to do it when they're 3 years old. Come on.
Well, we had to do that too. We just had a kindergarten interview, but it's not $40,000 for the
That's true.
whatever it is in New York,
Also true.
which is
Yeah.
nice. Which is nice. So basically what happened was Syracuse, my alma mater, my mentor was retiring,
Hmm.
and she knew that I was kind of wanting to leave New York City, and she asked if I wanted to apply, and I did, and I it took. These applications are huge, and
Uh-huh.
teaching methodology papers, and
Yep.
and you have to collect all these references and get them to write letters for you. It takes months to get this
Hmm.
application together. And then after I submitted, the provost was like, "Sorry, you need to have a terminal degree, a master's," which I do have now, but I didn't at
Hmm.
the time.
Hmm.
So I spent all the time, and I was like, "Well, now that I have all my papers together, I might as well just
Might as well do
see
the
what else
thing.
is out there."
Yep.
And it just so happened that Oakland University, they needed somebody really quickly, to replace somebody, and I submitted there. I submitted to a few other places. They had me fly in, and they gave me the interview. I taught a class for them, and it just felt really like home to me, and I really loved it there. So they offered me the job, and I found myself being the only full time musical theater professor. And
Hmm.
I just basically said, well, if I'm the only musical theater professor, even though I'm brand new to this, I am the coordinator.
There you go.
Period. I
Yeah.
put it on my business card. I put it on my signature line, and then it just was right,
Uh-huh.
which is an impossible thing if you just are starting with a BFA, right? Normally, you need to
Uh-huh.
have your master's, and I've taught for a long time to run the program. But I found myself just making all these decisions, and also helping. My first year was when COVID hit, and I found myself making all these huge decisions to help the program run
Uh-huh.
when a lot of programs were flailing. And I just said, "This is listen. If I'm going to be working this hard, this is what I am." And
Uh-huh.
and everybody was just like down with it, and that's how it happened.
Talk about yes-anding yourself into a job and going,
It's
uh-huh, yeah, I
exactly
am this.
it's
And you'll tell me I'm
that
this.
is exactly what
That's awesome.
happened. And luckily,
Um,
everybody else said yes and.
we missed your, so I guess we missed your terminal degree. So I read the BFA into the record. What else? What's your master's or where's your
So
master's from?
while I was at Oakland, I started thinking I wanted to have my master's just in case I ever wanted to make a move, which is what
Uh-huh.
I ended up doing. And at Oakland, they're very generous, and they I was able to get my master's for free,
Very cool.
which is huge. And a lot of people who are coordinators, they might have their master's in musical theater, which is a rare thing to
Yep.
find. There's not many programs that have that. Or they might have their master's in directing, this or that. And I just could not. I spent so long in
Yeah.
the classroom of life
Yeah.
in musical theater. I couldn't see myself doing that. And I also I have so much like to impart of the things that I've learned over the years that I decided I wanted it to be an education,
Uh-huh.
so I could best take the things that I have and give them to my students. So my master's is in higher education leadership.
Very cool. Very
And
cool.
because I just took the job as the leader, I
Yeah.
figured having the degree in it might give some credence
Some
to
clout, some truth to it.
exactly.
I love that. Though I feel my professors cringing that someone called your BFA from Syracuse not a terminal degree. In musical theater, that is a terminal degree.
I guess
We
it is
feel,
in musical theater. It almost is, but
but
not in
not for
academia.
Syracuse.
In academia, terminal degree. I think it's in theater as a master's, and one step past that, it's doctorate. And
Yep.
but I do think.
PhD in theater. We've had people on it with PhDs in theater,
Oh,
but that
really?
feels
Oh my god,
crazy to me.
I can't imagine
It's
going
so
back to
much
school for
study.
theater.
Yeah.
Like I've lived it, I've done the thing,
Yeah.
and I do feel like the things that I teach the most are things that I got from doing,
Yes, for
or
sure.
learned, or from the mistakes that I've made
Yeah.
when it comes to the business of the business and stuff like
Totally.
that.
Okay, well, let's dive into Missouri State a bit
Yeah,
from your perspective. I'm already going to have queued this up into the episode in the intro, but of course, many of our listeners will have already heard the episode with Robert Westenberg, who was the previous coordinator. And some of this, for many, will be the first encounter with the school if they don't go back into the archive. So we're going to try to balance some information that'll be a bit repeat in hearing your perspective and some more concrete specifics that we might not dive into quite as deeply. But as we've done with other 2.0 interviews with schools, we're going to try to move that conversation forward as much as
well,
possible.
since you mentioned Bob, I don't think I
Yeah.
finished. You said how did I end up at Missouri State?
Hmm.
So Bob Westenberg, for those of you who don't know, he was the original Wolf and Cinderella's Prince and Into the Woods, and he was in the original cast of Sunday the Puppet George, and he was Neville in the original Secret Garden, and he was somebody who I'd always looked up to my whole life. And then when I started coordinating at Oakland, I got right into. Previously at Oakland, they had only recruited like regionally or
Uh-huh.
locally, and I wanted to build the best program in the country, and that's still
Hmm.
my goal. So to do that, I needed students from all over, right?
Hmm.
So I just called all the recruitment events, the Moonifieds, the Chicago Unifieds, CAP, Pittsburgh Unifieds, and I just called and said, "Can I get involved?"
Yeah.
And if you let me be involved, I'll teach a class to everybody.
Uh-huh.
And so that's how I got involved really quickly. And while I was there, I saw Bob Westenberg, and I told him, I'm a huge admirer of your work, and can we have lunch? And we did the first. So that would have been 5 years ago now. And he, over lunch, that first time we met, I think it was at the Moonifieds in Texas, he would just start to tell me the things that he's excited about for his program. And while he was doing that, I would be like, oh, yeah, I wish I had that,
Hmm.
or I wish I was doing that, or basically the things he was saying, I'd be like, I would be 5 years closer to my goal if I had the
Uh-huh.
things that you've already put in place.
Uh-huh.
And one of the things that he said, and this is what I remember I think it was at CAP actually. We would give our program presentation, and I'd be envious of the things that he brought to his program, but also I'd be proud of the things that I brought to Oakland. But then he would say, and we're only $7,000 a
Uh-huh.
year. That's not what it is
Uh-huh.
anymore. It's more than that.
Yeah.
But I was like, how do I follow that? seven
How do you
thousand
beat
dollars
that?
a
I know.
year with Bob Westenberg,
I know.
and so we were quite a bit more. We're still, by the way, our tuition is only
Hmm.
$9,023. I'm sure we'll talk about that later. So yeah, I would get to know Bob and learn things about the department, learn about the 10th Theater, our summer stock outdoor amphitheater that John Goodman built for us.
Hmm.
He's an alumnus of the program, and get to know about their CCM curriculum, contemporary commercial voice curriculum, which I've always. It's very hard, by the way. I'm sure a lot of your students are going to look at programs, and a lot of the voice is taught out of the School of Music,
Uh-huh.
and it's very hard for musical theater coordinators to get rock, pop, rap
Uh-huh.
into that curriculum because it's just been this way forever, right?
Yeah.
But Bob here, he did manage to do that, and all of the voice teachers are CCM certified. So when he said stuff like that, it's like amazing.
Hmm.
And they said, in addition to their voice lessons, we also have a CCM class taught every semester of their time here, and I thought that was so valuable because there's no Phantom or Les Mis on Broadway
Yeah.
anymore. Um, so yeah, fast forward 4 years, every time at all these conferences, we would hang out, we'd have lunch, we'd talk, And then he told me he was retiring, and I said, "Okay, great. I'm going to take your job then. Is that okay?"
And did he say yes? I'm gonna put in a good word.
Yeah, he said he was like, I would love to put this in your hands,
Yep.
and because he knows how passionate I am about student success, and
Yep.
I know he holds this place, in a place in his heart, and he
Yep.
cares about the students, and he cares about what happens to them. So it was really a nice passing of the baton. I did the whole, they flew me in. I did the teaching. I taught everybody. I did a presentation. I did everything every other applicant did, but I know that I did have Bob in my corner.
Uh huh.
And that's how it happened.
So cool. Well, and I love even hearing you just talk about your dreams and really your ambitions for the program. I sometimes assume that when I'm talking to people about growing smaller programs and you'd be surprised like how many professors go, no, we're pretty happy with, we're happy with our local, whatever. We're not trying to be this other thing.
That's okay, and that's okay.
Yeah. But it's kind of refreshing to hear you're like, we want to be the best in the country.
No,
Like
I've
just hearing
I've
that
got goals,
nakedly
and
said.
I
Yeah.
absolutely have goals for the program and for the students for sure.
It's really cool. Well, so tell me, and now you can give me a little bit of sort of what your experience of Missouri State students currently are, and you can also, if there's some vision toward what the future is. But what do you see as a Missouri State student in terms of how it's unique and maybe different from other, BFA students?
So this is why it was such a great passing of the baton, because Bob and I spoke the same language and we look for the same things. And what I saw when I got here was that each student is their peer's best cheerleader.
Hmm.
There is no, at least it doesn't seem like it. There's no real competition. All the competition is between the student and their potential,
Yep.
their own potential, and everybody's a cheerleader for each other. And because I know that that is the best environment for growth, it helps me with my goals, right?
Yep.
Selfishly. So I selfishly do look for students that are supportive of each other, that
Yep.
are nice, that we want to spend time with, because I know that that's how I can get the best work out of students. And if
Yep.
I don't get great work out of students, then they're not going to grow. They're not going to get cast. They're not going to have jobs, which is my main goal, that they have a job to go to when they graduate. So again, selfishly, when I'm looking to cast folks, it's not all altruistic. I want
Yep.
students who are good people, so that in addition to being supportive of each other, when they graduate, and I've gotten them to know every casting director in the business. When that casting director has them in and the creative team loves them and they call me and
Hmm.
say, "Josh, I have so and so here. Are they good to work with?" I can say, "Yes, hire
Uh-huh.
them. You will not regret it." When in the past that has not happened, and I've had to say, "Yeah, I don't. I have to be honest with you. I don't
Uh-huh.
think that's a great choice for your team." That's broken my heart.
Yep. That's
Um,
such a funny framing of the idea of like being a kind, supportive person to be like out of ambition for my own program's growth. But it makes sense. I mean, I talk about that all the time, especially at the highest levels. It's like just selfishly, you need to be a nice person. That like it will bite you in the butt. Eventually, everybody's so talented that if
yeah,
you're a pain to work with, no one wants to work with that person.
yeah.
Yeah.
You have to be somebody might want to spend 12 hours in a room with.
Yep. Yep. It's totally true. Talk to me a little bit. You mentioned some curriculum things, and you can talk about things that have changed since you've gotten there. But I guess since 2 years ago when Robert was on the pod. But take me through the 4 years. What is the musical theater curriculum currently, and are there any big changes that you sort of see yourself implementing in terms of updating the curriculum for 2024?
Yeah, I am making big changes. Some have already been made. I've added 2 courses to the curriculum already. Previously, I saw that there was a hole in the crafting of like a song, that there was
Mm-hmm.
only, which was surprising to me because of the caliber of talent that had already graduated from here.
Mm-hmm.
There was only one like musical theater song interpretation class, and
Uh-huh.
that's kind of like what we do. So I thought that was crazy for one
Uh-huh.
semester. So I've added 2 more. I've added an advanced song analysis class, and which we call acting the song 2, and
Yep.
then acting the song 3, which is duets, solos, duets, trios, group numbers.
Mm-hmm.
So I've added those classes. I thought it was necessary. Um, I'll be adding a summer theater mandate that everybody has to do at least one summer of summer stock, and
Cool.
that's not a difficult thing, considering I spend maybe 100 hours a week for certain weeks of the year, putting my students on tape, doing their self tapes for
Uh-huh.
them. So we sit there again because I have goals. So
Uh-huh.
I do their self tapes for their pre screens for them here. In our new part of my startup package, I got an on camera studio.
Uh-huh.
So so that mandate. We're also starting a 29-hour reading initiative, which is something I'm bringing with me that I started at Oakland,
Yep.
because it occurs to me that 29-hour readings, nobody in any college, once they graduate, they don't know what it is. And
Yep.
that's crazy considering you'll end up doing more 29-hour readings probably than anything
So true.
else.
So true.
And it occurred to me, like in my own life, my one of the Broadway shows that I did started as a 29-hour reading,
Hmm.
Amazing Grace, and the first 29-hour reading. And the folks watching at home, they're like, "What's that? What is that?" I'll get to it.
Hmm.
Um, the first 29-hour reading. Well, I'll get to it right now. So, a 29-hour reading is what Actors Equity allows for the first few times a script is put in front of producers, a creative team. You can hire Actors Equity members at a certain rate, but you can only use them for 29 hours in a 7-day period. That's
Hmm.
the long and the short of it. So so I brought that to Oakland, and this is the reason. Um, One of the like 20 or 30 29-hour readings that I've done in my life was Amazing Grace, and the first one was in 2008. And then we
Hmm.
did another 29-hour reading in 2009, and then we did a workshop in 2010, and then another in 2011, then an out-of-town tryout at the Oriental Theater in Chicago, and then another out-of-town tryout at Goodspeed Opera. And then in 2016, 8 years later, it was on Broadway.
Hmm.
During those 8 years, I saw leading ladies coming and going. I saw
Uh-huh.
other cast members coming and going. And what I want for my students is for them to know how to ingratiate themselves to the
Uh-huh.
artistic team and the producers so that they stay. So that
Uh-huh.
their first Broadway show, they might not have even had to audition for. They
Uh-huh.
were, because I'm introducing all my students to all the the major casting directors, and they'll know their work at a school. My hope is that they'll be asked to do a 29-hour reading, and they'll know how to stay along for the whole journey. So that's one of the paths that I'm creating to a job for them.
It's really cool. Is it the focus of that class more the business of the business relationships, or is it more like technique based? Like, how do you approach a 29-hour reading differently than you would a full
So
rehearsal
that's
class?
it's not. So we have a business of the business class, and we're adding an additional audition class to the mix, which I'll talk about later, hopefully. Um, this is not a class. This is an additional performance. It'll
Right.
be a
You are
performance
doing the 29
opportunity.
hour
We'll
reading. Yeah.
actually do it, so it's
Hmm.
outside of their classwork.
Very
Mhm.
cool. Well, and then how does that? So it sounds like some additional requirements and coursework to the BFA. How does that affect sort of any academics that they potentially have trying to squeeze in, and or their schedules in general? Is it just a more jam packed schedule than it was 2 years ago?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm having to look at how we will, how this puzzle will fit together. I think one thing I'm considering is so there are classes, like for instance right now, like I said to you, every semester they have their CCM voice class,
Yep.
right? um, I'm thinking, what could we have private voice CCM classes instead of a full class, which is more credits, which means their schedule is more jam packed.
Uh huh.
So it would be once a week for an hour, in addition to the regular voice lessons, instead of twice a week for
Hmm.
an hour 45 minutes, stuff like that. That's what I'm
Hmm.
having to juggle. But yes, it's a balancing act. And a lot of the questions that I got just this last weekend at Chicago Unified's: can you do a double major?
Right.
Can you do a minor? Yeah, depending on who you are, yes, I know I couldn't have done that. And I know parents are going to hate that I'm going to say this, but I think I know people want something to fall back on. They want that if this doesn't work out, right?
Yep.
Uh, I think for a lot of people, if you don't put everything into this career because it's so hard, and because there's
Hmm.
always somebody working harder than you lessen your chances of success.
Hmm.
Again, this is selfishly, because if I have a student who's splitting their time between business and musical theater, then I might not achieve my goal of having them in a job when they graduate.
No, it's super helpful to hear. And we always talk about it as about the right student finding their fit. Is this the kind of school that is going to match what you want to be doing in college? There's nothing wrong with wanting to study lots of different things, but you're saying at Missouri State, the focus wants to be in the musical theater program. Not that you can't take outside classes, but you want your focus to be here and most of your time and energy to be going toward the musical theater.
Yeah, and that is the type of student that I'm looking for.
Yep.
I ask the question, what do you want to be doing when you graduate?
Yep.
And I'm okay with say it's okay to. A lot of people, they're not okay to say this. I'm okay for you to say I want to be working on Broadway.
Right.
That's an okay thing to say. You don't
Yeah.
have to say I just want a job, which is great
Realistically, I'll
too.
take
A
any
job is
job.
great.
I
A
know. I'm
job is
like,
great.
well,
But
what's
like,
your ambition? What's your
if,
goal?
if you
Yeah.
if you're reaching for the moon, right,
Yep.
you might just get there. If you're
Yep.
not, then you might fall short.
Yep. Yeah, now you're going to get me on a tangent that if you reach for the moon, you don't land among the stars. The stars are farther away than the moon. It's a whole other.
Well,
I'm
yes,
just
yes.
saying the sort of
But perhaps you'll land
jargon
on a
there.
fluffy cloud.
You land on a cloud, doesn't quite get out of the atmosphere exactly. Well, leads me to sort of the disciplines of musical theater. Robert talked about, from his perspective, really acting was the focus of the three disciplines of musical theater. That was his perspective, and he was also honest about that's his bias. That was his training. That was is that still going to be true from your perspective, where it's a more of an acting-centric musical theater program?
Yes, 100% acting first. The reason I say it's because acting needs to be a part of everything you do. It
Mm-hmm.
needs to be part of. It needs to be, well, as I'm sure the MTCA students know. Just the walking into the room
It's so
is a
true.
whole
Yep.
production, and it's. I mean, you should be yourself, right?
Yep.
But getting out of your own way in terms of our acting training is helpful. Getting that movement stuff gets you to it helps with your nerves, and acting should be brought to your dance. Acting should be brought to your singing. It's a little bit more difficult to bring your dance into your voice lessons. You know what I
Yep.
mean? Acting needs to be a part of everything, and I do think acting comes first. I should say though, I look at being a business person as half of what your training should be.
Uh huh.
Knowing how to get a job,
Uh
because
huh.
no matter how great your training is, if you're just if you're a lot of schools will say that they want to make you employable. I say I want to make you employed. I want you to have a job when you get out of this, right? Because no matter how good your training is, if you're just doing it in your singing in the shower, it's
Mm-hmm.
not doing you much good.
Mm-hmm.
So while yes, acting first when you're talking about the three disciplines, acting, singing, dancing, um, but also a huge part of, if not half, I think needs to be the business of the
Well, let's
business.
get to that. Let's get to the sort of, you mentioned the business class and how you might be making adjustments there, but really just holistically from the university perspective, what are you doing to prepare your students for the sort of launch into the business? It sounds like you're saying specifically right out of school, you want them to have a job, not just a prospect, but a job. How are you making that happen? How are you trying to make that happen?
Many different ways. One of the ways, so I'll just start with the 29-hour reading. The way we get those writers from New York City to come here
Mm-hmm.
is that I tempt them with, we'll make you a demo. I have a recording studio on campus. If you
Uh-huh.
come here, you get a demo for your musical. So if during that 29-hour reading process, those creatives love one of our students, let's just say, 4 years down the line, they've gone through other 29-hour readings workshops. They've already done their out-of-town trial in Chicago
Yep.
and at Goodspeed. And now their main character was just hired in a different Broadway show. What are we
Mm-hmm.
going to do? Hey, remember that guy from Missouri State?
Uh-huh.
Let's have them in,
Yep.
right? That's just, so I think of them as like paths to a job,
Yep.
paths to employment. That's just one. Another thing we do, that summer mandate, right?
Yep.
You make connections specifically so that you have a job. If a student tells me they want to be on Broadway when they graduate, well, they'll say, okay, let's make sure we get you to the New England Theater Conference, and they'll say
Mm-hmm.
why, and I'll say, well, a lot of Broadway directors and choreographers, they like to have a working summer vacation,
Yep.
and they'll get paid well to uh, have a house on the beach while they're working at Algonquin Playhouse, and
Mm-hmm.
you'll get to know them, and then they'll have a show going to Broadway, and then their main guy gets cast, and they'll be like, "Oh, remember that Missouri State student who we had?"
You're pitching in to get to that remember place. Remember that guy?
Well,
Remember that guy?
exactly,
Yep.
exactly. It's us, it's those making those connections
Yep.
right off the bat. And in addition, we have throughout their 4 years, they'll have the opportunity to sign up for master classes with the big casting directors. We
Uh-huh.
we had we had Murray Sugarman from Tara Rubin just work with our students. We had Rachel Hoffman from Telsey just work with our students, and it's the students who sign up for these opportunities
Yep.
that make my job easier,
Yep.
right? Because I've had students. I'll go back to Oakland, but I would offer the same opportunities there, and there would be one or two freshmen who would always try to sign up and be a part of this,
Uh-huh.
and then they would do it their sophomore year, and then they would do it their junior year, and then their senior year. And by the time they get out, they're on a first name basis with Rachel Hoffman,
Uh-huh.
and have her email address, and their
Uh-huh.
friends, and it's them, not friends. You're not gonna be, don't email casting directors, okay? But unless they give it to you, right? Unless they
Yeah.
give you your email, unless you forward me a thank you letter,
Mhm.
and I send it to them with your email on it, and they respond to you, then that's an opening
Mhm.
for you to have their email address, right? And that's huge.
Mhm.
That's huge when a lot of people will end up getting to New York and just praying that they can get in front of the assistant, which is also
Yep.
great. Like, you want to get in front of the assistant's not always going to be the assistant, and they can pass you on.
Yep.
But if I give you the opportunity, to meet with one of these people, take the opportunity.
Yep, totally. Well, and at the time, it sounded like Robert had just shifted to an all virtual showcase experience. What is your sort of plan for the showcase experience now and in the near future?
So what Missouri State historically has done is a panel showcase where they essentially pay five top casting directors
Hmm.
to watch the showcase and then do like a round robin meeting, one-on-one meetings.
Uh-huh.
So it's more FaceTime, sitting down and with each one of these casting directors, and them getting to know you on a personal level. I thought we needed more than that, and I've had a lot of success. Creating the typical big showcase. My students last year did really, really well. Um, so what I did was I said, "Hey, Oakland, do you want to team up?" And since I spent 4 years trying to build up
Uh-huh.
this showcase, why don't we team up and we'll do a showcase together?
Uh-huh.
So that's what's happening now. So our students have three showcases. They've got the panel showcase, they've got the big showcase with every agent, casting director, manager in New York. Hopefully, we try to get them in attendance. So they got those two, and then they also can do the LA showcase because they go through the same acting curriculum as the actors.
Hmm.
Which, by the way, just now that we're mentioning it, we have a brand new film acting certificate program.
Hmm. Very cool. And the showcase in New York is just musical theater, or is also musical theater and actors
Just
together?
musical theater.
But then LA is actors and
Yes.
musical theater can join.
Yes. Hmm.
Very cool.
Right.
I love it. All right, so many showcases paring down. It seems like you're ramping up as in terms of your showcase ambitions. Really exciting.
Yeah. I mean, listen. Do you need a showcase? I don't know. In terms of recruiting, is it good to say you got three showcases?
Totally.
Yeah, it is.
Well, and yeah, I think the basically it's like if you can get people to attend it, a showcase is fantastic. I think some of the people paring down were realizing we're not getting the attendance we hoped we were getting.
So
Um, but that
so
sounds
it
like you're
was
trying
really
to ramp
great
up
for
again.
us at Oakland because we spent a week there after the showcase where we could have appointments,
Uh huh.
and a lot of casting directors would have callbacks for shows currently on Broadway with my students.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm going to be doing here next year, having them stay a few days extra this year because I just got here. Schedules didn't quite work out that way. They have to fly out if they want to be in the LA showcase like the next day.
Uh huh.
So they'll be doing virtual meetings and stuff like that.
Totally makes sense. Well, and talk to me a little bit about, your recruiting. We talked about often at the breakdown of where do students come from and kind of where do they end up. Uh, how are you finding the experience now as you're going around the country recruiting of getting people to come to Missouri, right? Are you struggling to get people from the coasts? Is that, we'll talk about costs in a second. Does that big low cost number help you? Or how is that going in terms of trying to get, as you go all over the country meeting students and sort of having people from the wide swaths of the country come?
Uh, yeah, so I'm seeing more students than I've ever seen before. There's a lot of interest in the program. I think it's partially because of our low price. Let me just, before I forget, I just want to go back and say something to the students watching this, and it's not necessary to go to a school that has a live showcase necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to say that because I did not get an agent or get a single meeting for an agent at my Syracuse University showcase, and I did just fine for myself.
Mm-hmm.
So just know that, right? I had a very successful career. I couldn't have wanted anything else out of my career, and I didn't get anything from my showcase. I
Mm-hmm.
got a commercial agent. People know me as this guy with a big voice and a serious actor, blah blah blah. I got a commercial agent,
Mm-hmm.
so don't depend on your showcase. The way I got it was I got an agent before I graduated by spending my summer in New York and sending out CDs, right,
Uh-huh.
when CDs were a thing, and taking meetings my sophomore year of college. So take it upon yourself. Don't depend on your university to get you that agent.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now back to recruiting. Um, yeah, it's going great. People are really interested in the program. I think they're interested in the direction I'm bringing it. The low price does not hurt, um, and I'm able to sleep at night telling parents the price tag, and considering what we offer.
And which again, we'll just read that into the record. You said $9,024 was the tuition for
Uh,
in-state.
Either 923 or 924. Yeah,
Okay, well,
yeah.
we have 924 here, but I believe you 923. I would believe that.
You might be right.
And how does it work in terms of in-state, out-of-state tuition in terms of for the
So
musical
if you
theater
have
student?
above a 3.0, you get in-state tuition. You get that $9,023.
That was above a 3.0. That's achievable. We can do it out there, students.
I know. Last year it was 2.5 here, and I check it out because I think it's 3.0. It might be 2.5. It's definitely not above 3.0.
Yep,
Okay.
that's great.
But most of our students are not even paying that because there's very generous scholarships. We don't have any talent scholarships here. That's the one thing I want people to know. So don't think we don't aren't really interested in
Uh-huh.
you because you're not getting a scholarship, a talent scholarship from us. We don't have that because of probably because of the low price of tuition.
Yep.
But the school, the academic scholarships are very generous. Our presidential scholarships $15,000, so that's more than your tuition.
Yep.
That's
Meaning that you could help pay down cost of living.
housing and
Yeah,
stuff.
it's
Yep.
amazing.
But there's tons. If you go on to, let me see, I have it right here, MissouriState.com/financial aid, you can see the exact criteria. It's not nebulous.
Yep.
It tells you exactly what you need for each dollar amount.
Yep. And how
So
much, I know we always talk about with our students how much it varies school to school in terms of the way, quote unquote, scholarship negotiation happens. And we're right at that time of year as this is going to be released in a couple weeks, is early March. How much sort of influence or control, or if someone reaches out to you and you say, I really want you, we don't have talent scholarships, how much are you able to help toward the academic money? Or is it all just by the numbers with the university? You have
zero.
no control?
I can't help at all.
So if they're
Like,
begging you, you're not. It's not an insult if you say, "I'm so sorry." That's got to be done with the
yeah,
academics. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, in the future, I intend to try to get grants and make it so we have talent scholarships here. But just what I've walked into, we don't have that right now.
Yep. You just have to write them a letter that says you've been awarded a theoretical talent. You are good. I like you. $9,000 much or whatever.
I like you very much.
Very, very good at acting.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Anything else you want to say about the university before we switch into the second half and dive into the audition process?
I think we
we
hit
covered a lot of it.
the main points. Yeah.
All right. Well, then we'll be back in a flash to talk about the audition and admission process, Missouri State. All right, we are back with Josh Young from Missouri State. And I just love to start off with just what are you looking for when you sit in auditions? You just sat in all these darn auditions for week after week here, going through Unifieds and all these different things. What are you trying to sniff out that would make you interested in a student being a potential Missouri State candidate?
I mean, talent is a given. Obviously, I want somebody who's got incredible vocal control and who is dropped it. What we call dropped in their acting and is coming from a real place. So putting that aside, because I feel like that's a given, it's just really somebody who seems like a good folk. You
Mm-hmm.
know, seems like they would be supportive of their classmates. That they would be somebody who, when a casting director says, "Josh, should I hire this person?" I can say, "Absolutely, hire them now."
Mm-hmm.
They will make the process better for you, and they will contribute.
And how are you testing that out? Like, so, you mentioned some of the questions you might ask them or some of the interactions you might have in the room, sort of other than, of course, them presenting. And if they're well prepared, they're presenting multiple pieces, showing off different things, showing off that talent. But how are you sniffing out from behind the table? I'm trying to see, are you good folk or are you like, what are you doing to sort of press them and feel that out from them?
Well, I think a lot of people are kind of caught off guard when I call them back and I don't ask them to sing, and we're just chatting.
Mm-hmm.
For the most part, that's what it is. When you get a call back with me, for the most part, depends. If a long time has gone by between when I saw you first and your call back, I might ask you to sing something again. But usually, it's just to talk, and that's how. And
Yep.
I hope that I'm a good judge of character, and that's it.
Well, can you explain that? Because I was going to ask about the different platforms. You are available at all of the different platforms. We can find Josh Young at a Moonifieds, at a Drunifieds, at a Poonifieds, at a Goonifieds. Whatever it is, you're going to be there, right? How does that work with the different times of year? And you mentioned callbacks. So now if you're meeting someone at Pittsburgh or meeting someone at Moonifieds, are you then going to be calling them back in Chicago? Is the majority of your Chicago auditions callbacks as opposed to first auditions?
It's different. It's different depending on the place. Each place is run differently. Like Pittsburgh, a lot of there's only so much time there. So I would see a lot. I would call a lot of people back virtually, but I'd also call people back the next day, and we
Uh-huh.
would just chat. That's how
Yep.
it would work there. In Chicago, we allowed ourselves a good amount of time for just the main audition, and sometimes we would talk to them enough there that we would feel it out, and we would. In fact, I think I made an offer in the room, two offers in the room this year
Uh-huh.
because I had such a good feeling about the talent
Mm-hmm.
personality combination. Um, so there's no real recipe to how it happens. And a lot of people in Chicago, I've called back for a virtual callback so that we can just chat over Zoom
Uh-huh.
because I want to be really particular about who we accept out of these over 1,000 people that we've seen.
Yep. So more often than not, they're going to have an audition with you, whether it's one of those consortium style auditions or some early audition, and then some element of an interview is a second step for you often.
Yeah, most often, unless we have a lot of time in the room with you, um, on the first audition. You know, if
Yep.
we've got 15 minutes there, then it's probably enough.
Great. Well, then let's talk about the pre-screen of it. Both, it sounds like some of these live audition pre-screens, but maybe let's get into the video pre-screen itself. Last time Robert talked about you accepted the common pre-screen requirements as a
That's right.
video submission, but for him, he was using it more as a post-screen, but not really as a pre-screen. Is that your intention as well to
That's what we
take the common
do.
pre-screen?
We see we watch. I watch everybody's. That being said, and this is something I actually talked to Leo about when I saw him in Chicago. We sat down. Um, you know, because of the amount of I want to see everybody's. I don't want to just have somebody else like watching the pre-screens and passing them
Hmm.
off to me. I watch everybody's, but I normally don't get before a callback. Okay, I watch 10 seconds,
Right.
and that's all I need usually. So make sure, and this is in live. If you're going in live and it's the first time you're being seen, this happened a lot in Chicago. Ask somebody else which song you should lead off with,
Hmm.
because a lot of times I would feel that the person's leading off with the wrong one.
Hmm. Which in
Obviously,
your recommendation would be the stronger one first.
right, the
Yeah.
stronger one, or a lot of the time, and so because this is you're not auditioning for a role, you're auditioning for um, us to hang out and me to teach you
Yep.
for a while. Um, really, you should stick to what shows who you are the best,
Hmm.
and and you need to think of it like it's a first meeting. This is the first time we're meeting you, and a lot of people behind the desk are not that creative and can't see past what you're putting in front of them. So if you're going in there and you're singing the maddest version of "What Is It About Her" that I've ever seen,
Hmm.
I might just think that that's who you are, this
Uh-huh.
mad dude. And yeah, you're an actor. I get it. I get it. I get it. But also, this is a first meeting, and if you
Hmm.
can thrive in something that is charming and ingratiating, like "Seeing You There" by Adam Guan, or something that makes our hearts melt, do that instead. I know
Hmm.
it sounds ridiculous, but it's a first impression.
It's such good advice. And I do think sometimes I'll hear our students as they're planning it going, but if I do this and then this, will that make them ask me for a third thing? They're sort of setting up their expectations of what is the perfect way it could go of progressing from one to two to three. And I want to go like, I don't think that's all going to happen. I think you're picturing all this happening in the room versus going, what is the thing that you do best? That might be all they see. Then they go, that's awesome. Do you have anything else? But if not, then they've seen enough.
Yeah, sing what you do best first. I'll ask for a third song if I want to hear them sing. I usually will if they don't come in with something that's rock or pop, or
Right.
if I can't tell that they can sing rock or pop from whatever they sang, I'll ask for that third song.
Yep, totally makes sense. Okay. Anything else we need to say about different platforms in terms of like you guys also do virtual auditions? So how does it change when it's a virtual audition for you? Does it change any of what you're looking for, or how the audition goes? What you would expect from a student if they're doing a virtual audition?
Do you mean watching a taped audition, or
I mean,
live like
like
you and I
a
right now?
live Zoom audition, version of these.
Oh, so take the time and have somebody in another state or like down the street make sure that your setup is okay.
Uh huh.
Like it is really frustrating for us, and it says a lot if you haven't done that. We can't help but say, is this the type of care that they might take when we give them an assignment here?
Yep.
You know, take that. This is your future. I mean, it's a big deal. Take the time to make sure that your setup works for you,
Yep.
uh, that the sound is okay. Learn how to do the sound. I'm sure MTCA has a worksheet or something to give to you. Make sure, and I talked to Leo about this too, and I'm sure Leo says the same. You guys all tell the same thing. The camera I think should be at your eye level. No,
Mm-hmm.
if you're sitting, you're standing, whatever. And that doesn't mean that it should be placed on a desk pointed up towards your eye, because then
Uh
we feel
huh.
like little children looking at you. So if you're 5'8", right, then the camera should be 2 inches below your head at your eye level. So your
Mm-hmm.
camera should be set, the lens of the camera, at 5'6",
Mm-hmm.
right? That's what eye level means to me. Um, Make sure you're not lit from behind, but you're lit
Mm-hmm.
from in front, so we can see you. We just need to be able to see you well. Make sure you're somewhere that has a good enough internet connection. And if you're not at somewhere that has a good enough internet connection, say, I'm sorry, we don't have a good enough internet connection. Is it okay if I just send you videos, and then can we chat? Can we
Uh huh.
chat after that?
Yep.
Because not everybody has a great internet connection, and we understand that.
Yep.
But I think it's totally okay to say that.
I love it. Okay, great. Let's just chat a little bit. We mentioned sort of the combination of skill versus those intangibles. It sounds like skill is paramount for you, but of course, then you're really looking toward those intangibles. Let's talk about what are the aspects of the audition other than, or excuse me, of the application other than the audition that factor in for you? So do you look at grades or SATs or essays, letters of recommendation, all that stuff you made yourself prepare for Oakland or for Syracuse? Do you look at any of that stuff in the application at all?
Nope.
And how does that factor in terms of from the Office of Admissions? Basically, if they're above the minimum GPA, is that all that matters, or is there significant weighing in where
I
you really
think
want a student and they
I
say
think at
sorry?
Missouri State, if you're above that GPA, and it comes down to us. Like I think the university has something like a 90% acceptance rate, but
Uh-huh.
the department has something like a 7%.
Uh-huh. So very few students who are going to get into the department but wouldn't get into the
Yes,
university. Yeah.
I mean it happens, but rarely.
Well, let's get to what else are you thinking about as you're filling out your class, and especially now it's going to continue increasing for you in terms of the competitiveness and in terms of students that you want and then them wanting you back, right? Are you conscious of stuff like gender balance and height balance and racial diversity, size balance, geographical balance? Are you thinking about, hey, I'm putting this cohort of people together and I want them to look and feel a certain way? And I guess how does that factor into the way that you're making initial offers, and then of course the all important waitlist movement?
It's really tough because I don't like talking about type. I want everyone to be an individual. That being said, if someone feels very similar to somebody else, uh, it's going to be. I want everybody to have um, performing opportunities,
Hmm.
and it'll be one person or the other in that case, right? So I really want. And that's another thing that it's kind of an intangible thing again, but I want special folks.
Hmm.
Some that I want you to be different, right? I don't want you to sound like anybody else. I don't want you to act like anybody else. I don't want you to walk into the room like anybody else.
Hmm.
Um, that's a huge thing. That might be even above talent sometimes. I mean, look, Bernadette Peters is not the best singer in the world,
Hmm.
but her voice is so
Unique.
recognizable,
Yep.
and she's so unique
Yep.
that we want to watch her, right?
Yep.
But that's what that we want you to be special and a singular talent.
Yep. Well, and then how does that work for you? I guess in terms of the mechanics of stuff like waitlist movement, are you accepting just your minimum class first and then doing waitlist? Are you predicting some yield is going to be 50%? How do you think about that as you're trying to
So
work
it's
this
very,
together?
very difficult now because we know what worked for Bob, how many students to accept, and how many
Yep.
that would yield us.
Right.
We know what worked for me somewhere else. We have no idea what will work for me in this program the way I recruit.
Yep.
So I have to. So people who are waiting from us, I know it's going to be. I made some offers really quickly, but the rest, like I have to be careful because
Yep.
I want 15 students. That's
Right.
what I want. I
You
know
want 15.
that's what I want.
Yep.
There's reasons behind it in terms of how I schedule classes,
Yep.
but I don't want to go above 20, and I don't know how that's going to work. So I have to be kind of slow
Yep.
in some acceptances and pulling people off of our what we call the pool of consideration.
Yep.
If you're on that in that pool of consideration, you know it. We've let you know that we're still considering you.
Right. Which means we like you. It means we want you to
We
be
like
accepted
you.
to the
We
program.
like you. We
It's
just
just,
have to.
can we find a fit?
We just need to make sure that you're the right ingredient to this recipe that I'm
Yep.
making for this class.
Well, and then let's talk specifically for you, because again, this is going to come out. Mentioned it's going to come out in the time of often scholarship negotiation, but also in narrowing down decisions. I mean, a lot of our students, blessedly, are in the place where they have 3 or 4 options that they really like. How do you like to sort of be communicated with, as as people hopefully are authentically and earnestly going through the process? I think normally our students are not trying to manipulate anyone, but saying, I do really like you. I also like this other one. I'm doing my visits, right? How do you communicate that? Maybe especially if I'm one of those pool of consideration people.
You should let us know exactly how interested you are. There's a chance that an offer will go to somebody if you're equally as talented, and
Yep.
I know you're interested, and there's a better chance of you saying yes,
Yep.
just for our internal processes and making sure that I don't go over that 15
Right.
people. There's a better chance that you will get that offer.
You're saying there's value in them saying, I would commit tomorrow if this happened, or whatever. And you go,
100%.
okay, great.
That doesn't
locks it in
mean
for you.
that you're going to get the offer, but there is a better chance if you. It takes away nothing from you to let us know how interested you are.
Yep. Yep. I love it.
Somebody this year wore a Missouri State shirt to their audition.
To the audition. Now, and honestly, and that was a positive for you. That didn't feel too desperate or too much for you.
I loved it. I was like, okay, you're not playing around. It's like the person who comes in and says, "I want to be on Broadway." Great. Now I know how to help you.
Well, in some ways, also you're speaking to a fit with you of going that kind of student is bold and ambitious and something that you go that feels right for
Exactly.
Missouri State. I mean, that's funny. I've always told students, all right, don't literally wear the shirt in there. I feel like it might smell too desperate if you're like, I'm wearing Michigan to Michigan. I'm gonna get in here or whatever.
I mean,
I love it.
listen, they're in.
They're in. They got in. Well, there you
Yes.
go. I just wanted to warn you, Josh. You're about to have next year is going to have about 1,000 people wearing Missouri State shirts. You're not.
Awesome.
It's going to be like walking around the Palmer House with nothing but Missouri State clothing. I love it. Anything else in terms of the application process, the admission process that we didn't get a chance to hit on? I mean, a lot of it we hit with Robert too. So I don't think there's anything that's new that I haven't asked you. But anything else that you want to throw off from your
I
audition
mean,
experience?
well, I guess this would be mostly for next year's folks. I do think there's a benefit to auditioning early,
Hmm.
especially now. I'm talking as from my last position where I had money to give
Uh huh.
because we, we're only human and we could end up giving out money. And then when I see you in March, I
Yep.
don't have any more money to give.
Yep.
Right. So that's a good thing to know. I would audition early if you can. Um, Walking into the room like a person,
Hmm.
just being yourself. If I walk you in and I say your name already, just you don't have to say your name again
Yep.
necessarily. There's no like exact right way to slate. You
Yep.
might not even need to slate. If it feels like you don't need to slate, don't
Yep.
slate. I don't need a slate.
Yep.
Come and chat with us a little bit. Say how's your day? How you doing? Where you from? We'll chat a little bit and then go. But it's a different. Every room is different.
Yep.
Every room's different, and that's a good thing to learn, and something that we teach in our audition practicum class. Every audition's different. Not only is every room different, but there's so many different types of auditions that you need to learn about: ECCs, EPAs,
Yes.
direct submissions to casting directors. So you're in for being flexible,
Yep.
and you should be that right as soon as you can.
Yeah, what a skill set that sensitivity is to the room. I mean, this is true in any relationship where you go, what's going on right here? What's happening in this room? How do I
Yeah,
adjust to
feel
what's
it
going
out.
on? This room versus this room. That can be sometimes the bigger auditions I actually found were much less stressful because the casting directors at callback where they're like, hey, it's Charlie, so good to see you. Come on in. Like you're like, oh my God, this room is so warm and easy compared to other ones where it's colder and all right, whenever you're ready.
Make us laugh. If you can make us laugh, if you can do something, do it. If you
Yep.
have a song you'll be remembered.
Okay, only a couple more questions, and I know we have a hard out. We're going to let you go. I just want to say, as a young person in this world, because you are a fellow young father, and we're all young here, of course, we keep talking about it, just how do you see academia changing with your generation, right? We're seeing lots of programs with heads retiring, the landscape really shifting, especially, I think, resetting and kind of balancing from the trauma that was COVID and the turmoil that a lot of that caused to a lot of schools. But just from kind of a wide angle lens, how do you think this generation of professors are going to mold a different educational landscape than what came before?
So I did my master's thesis in equity, diversity, and inclusion in musical theater. So I think that needs to be at the forefront. But I think we're going through some growing pains right now in terms of what does that mean.
Hmm.
There's so many questions that we don't have answers. There's no handbook. That's something actually I want to write. Like nothing that says is it who is okay to play this part,
Yep.
right? If you're looking at, I know my previous institution, they're doing Jesus Christ Superstar right now, right? Is it okay that anybody's doing Jesus Christ Superstar, or does everyone need to be of Middle Eastern heritage?
Uh huh.
I mean, if you think about it, they should probably all be of Middle Eastern heritage, right? So what's okay, what's not?
Yep.
That's kind of what we're figuring out. Uh, you know,
I would add, I don't think there's just not a handbook. I think there's no consensus. I mean, there's
there's
no,
no
I mean,
consensus.
I asked a lot of artist guests this question of, poor Danny Feldman from Pasadena Playhouse. Like, tell me what you think about with casting. He was like, absolutely not. He didn't say that. He gave a good politic answer, but he was like, oof. I mean, it's really hard. It's just, I don't think there's an easy right answer of exactly where the line is for
Yeah,
anyone.
there's not, and students should know that I don't want to ask for a break, but like we're doing our best. Like this is the people who are my age. We want this, right?
Yep.
But this is newer to us.
Yep.
We want these changes, but we haven't grown up with
Yep.
them. So we're doing our best to figure out this new landscape.
Well, and it's
Um,
part of the reason I asked that question. I asked almost all professors a version of how do you interact with wait lists in terms of stuff like diversity of gender, height, race, whatever. Because if those things are important to you and you're going to maximize them and say this is something that will happen at my program, you essentially then do have to put people in some sort of box to say you are replacing you or replacing you or replacing you, and doesn't have to be A or B. I think see people live somewhere in between. They either go, some people say I don't think about it at all, and some people say I pay a ton amount of attention to it. But I don't think there's an easy answer of going, you know, a young Black woman will always be replaced by a young Black woman, or in
No.
those worlds.
It's that unique. It's that I want everyone to be an individual thing. That's really really important. Um, Again, everything that I do when it comes to designing the 4-year plan, designing a new course, it's all with an eye of I want a graduating class all going into jobs,
Yeah.
right? So that's taken into consideration when admitting new students, and I think we as an audience on Broadway or on tour, we have we have ADD. We are not the same old you know golden age or classical era, whatever you want to call the pre 1970 stuff. Um, there needs to be stakes. There needs to be a huge obstacle. You need to be using every tactic in the book. We need to see you fighting hard for what you want
Mm-hmm.
in your objective. Now, if this is why casting, having a diverse pool to cast from is very important to me, because I think this is the same thing that's going on Broadway. Whereas if I'm a Broadway producer and you're coming in for an audition and you are and it's for Oklahoma, and you are a 6'2" chiseled handsome white dude, how hard is it for you to get the girl? How big is your objective? How big is
Mm-hmm.
your obstacle, right? And as hard as that might be to hear for some people, and how easy it is to hear for other people, how great that is for some people, this is constantly evolving and changing.
Mm-hmm.
But we always want somebody who's got a bigger fight ahead of them.
Mm-hmm.
We want there to be more obstacles in their path as a, not as the actor but as the character, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're coming in there as somebody who's easily going to get the thing they want, an example that I use often is, because people know Les Miserables, Marius in Les Miserables, right? It's a role that I played. I think I've played the role more than anybody else in different productions.
Mm-hmm.
And you, there's, it's going to be way less interesting to see the chiseled, handsome dude who knows he's handsome,
Mm-hmm.
he knows how to speak to women, who
Mm-hmm.
knows that there's 10 other women waiting in the wings, who knows because that's going to say yes because he's
Mm-hmm.
handsome and he knows how to talk to women, rather than somebody who's not who you would expect, right? Somebody who's maybe not classically handsome, maybe somebody who's a complete, maybe somebody's not even the gender it's normally cast as, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's going to be a much bigger mountain or a much bigger obstacle in front of that person, which is going to make them fight harder, which is going to make us as an audience want to watch more, which is going to make a producer say, I can charge $350 for tickets for
Mm-hmm.
the show,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Now,
that's
you're
going to,
not casting yourself as someone who's not traditionally handsome, are you, Josh? Because I want you to know our students do all call you Hot Judas.
oh
Okay, that's as you
well,
walk out
thank
of the
you.
room, they go, "I just auditioned for Hot Judas." I'm like, okay, that's not. I'm just going to say.
I appreciate that, but if I went into my roles thinking that,
Yes, totally,
I would have no journey,
totally
and
makes
I
sense.
don't. But we, it is important that if not just for the sake of making interesting character choices for the journey, that you have a big obstacle in front of you. That's
Yep.
and for that, that's one other reason for equity, diversity, and inclusion in theater.
Totally makes sense. And is there anything else that you see, just, someone who is recently working on Broadway? I mean, quite recently. Are there places where you feel like universities are missing out on the realities of the business? You mentioned that 29-hour reading, and obviously, there's never going to be a replacement for direct experience. But do you feel like there are ways that schools can more directly prepare their students? Like, I'll say the number one thing when I ask artist guests of like, what did school not prepare them for? They always talk about the business, the realities of the business. So, what are some of those things that
Well,
we
that's
think
right.
universities
That's
can do?
right. And so what I did when I was a student is I asked the professors at Syracuse University, can I audit the business of the business class? And I took it every single year.
Uh huh.
So I was the only person who did that. And
Uh
now
huh.
I tell my students to do this also. Um, but like the more you can immerse yourself in the business of the business, the better.
Uh huh.
That is a huge thing. But I also think the mission statement of a lot of schools, I think that's a good question for students to ask. What is your school's mission statement?
Uh huh.
What is your program's mission statement? My mission statement is that you're employed, not just employable,
Uh
right?
huh.
So there's always, with having that goal, it I use what's called a backward mapping approach. Just kind of what we do as actors. I set my objective, and then every choice that I make has to lead toward that objective somehow.
Yep.
So if you have that as your end goal, then there's a really good chance you could reach that. If you
Uh,
don't, there's much less of a chance. If you just want to make sure that your students are good actors, then there's a good chance they'll be good actors when they graduate.
uh-huh. I think listeners would be shocked if they asked all the schools how few talk directly about employment, or how few just sort of tie that to success or not. That in
It's
terms of them going, my success is your growth as a human being, which makes sense. It's true.
That's
My
true too.
success is you getting in other places. But many, I think it would be more the exception than the rule, who would say, I care specifically about your employment immediately.
Well, that's so. So the success as a human being, the success as an actor, the success as a singer, the success as a dancer. Those are just components in my
Mm-hmm.
my goal. Those
Mm-hmm.
have to be there
In order
inherently
to get that
in order
employment,
to
to
get
get the
that,
employment.
right? So they're
Yep.
gonna be there.
That's so cool. All right, my last question to you, and then I really will let you go. Just as a young dad and someone who's now interacted with lots of parents of students going through this process, any advice to parents out there in terms of just how they can best support their child through the process?
Send them to Missouri State.
Good answer. Easy.
Well, I mean, I say that because if I had a child, and I'm biased because I know what this program is and the potential that it has. We also just got this theater department just got the largest donation in university history, and we're building a new facilities. And there's nothing wrong with our facilities now, but we just happen to get this. So knowing what I know that we offer, and knowing the price tag,
Mm-hmm.
I just don't know why you would send your child anywhere else. But I
Mm-hmm.
know things that they don't know. But that's why when they come into my office, I can tell them these things.
Mm-hmm.
And if money's not an object to you, still send them here, and then put that money into an interest-bearing account. And when your child graduates, here you go. Here's $200,000 that you
Here's some
saved,
rent.
as
Yeah,
opposed
exactly.
to if you were paying $60,000 going here, and you could live on it for a few years in New York City.
Well, but they're not all going to get into your school, Josh. Now you're listening. You're saying
That's
that,
true.
and
That's
now
true.
you're only going to take 15 of them are going to come into
true.
your school. Now
That's
they're all
true.
going to want to. They're all going
That's
to be
true.
dressed in Missouri State gear.
There are
and wanting to go
other
there.
great schools that don't cost $60,000.
That's true too. That's true too. All right. Well, thank you so much, Josh. This was
Thank you.
such a joy. I really appreciate having you on.
Thank you. Pleasure.